All right, welcome back to Reframe Podcast. Here again with Colleen Smith. Thanks again for making time. What I love about the magic of this is that people think that we like left and went home and then came back like another day. And really, it's just an ongoing conversation, which is fun for me. I want to go back to childhood, Colleen. So you gave us the family life. Is there contact?
So both of my parents passed away in the last year, a little over a year.
Wow.
And I do have 3 siblings. We have very strained relationship. It's there.
Yeah.
I think it's going to get better, but we struggle.
Gotcha. Yeah. And what about grandparents?
So all of my grandparents are also passed away.
Okay. Me too.
So it's just my 3 brothers and I, and somehow, someday, some way, with the grace of God, we're going to make it work.
Yeah. Are you youngest, middle, oldest?
I'm the oldest and the only girl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So where do they live?
So one of them actually lives in our childhood home, which is kind of cool and also kind of hard because that's where all of my bad memories are.
Right.
Which was a struggle. My mom never quite understood why I didn't want to come home for Christmas. And then finally one day I was like, look, here it all is. And then I have a brother who's in prison right now. Which is very hard. Like, we don't have a lot of contact with him. And then we have a third brother who's the one that's right under me, who just decided when he turned 18, he didn't really necessarily want to have a family, except for when it was convenient for him. So he's around, but not really. So
I got you.
Yeah.
How did you, because it's a crazy family upbringing that we talked about last episode. And like, how did you get out of how did you move your identity to being your identity's in Christ, and how did you let go of all of the hard stuff?
I would be lying if I told you that it's still easy, because it's not. Like, there's a lot of things that I've carried over from my childhood into adulthood. But when I came back from that kind of like quiet sabbatical that I had, I knew that counseling was something that I had needed to do. But counseling was always frowned upon in my family. Like, we have problems and we deal with them and we don't involve other people. But in that moment, I was like, well, I am my own person now and I'm not home and I have nothing to be afraid of. So I'm just going to do it. And so for me, a lot of my abuse was sexual abuse. I used to carry that with a lot of shame. And now I'm like, that's not what defines me.
Right.
So when I started counseling with a non-Christian counselor, but she was very much a sexual trauma therapist. And she helped me work through like all of that's where my identity was. And so she helped me work through all of that. So now I am seeing a Christian counselor. And I still think, even though I've come a long way in the last 9 years of counseling, I still need counseling. I think we all need counseling, and I think it's hard because there's a stigma sometimes. But for me, that's the place I can go and really know that like I can, one, just share where I'm at, but also still work through those things that I struggle with. There's a lot. Like, when you carry all of this stuff your entire childhood, you have to understand that that isn't your identity, which a few years ago, I shared my story publicly for the first time, and God kind of gave me this like idea that people need to understand that your life is a restoration experience, that like there's freedom, grace, redemption, and victory in all of our lives. And always, it's a continuous pattern of like God's always freeing you from something, always showing you grace, always redeeming you, and always has some victory he wants you to run towards. And so I had this idea when I stepped off the stage of like, I want to empower other people. Life happened and I wasn't like, it was just busy, and I kind of let that dream die. And then a couple years ago, God was like, nope, you're going to do this. And so I've been able to take my childhood, what I used to walk in shame with, and like say, no, like God gave me victory over this, and I'm going to walk around like God gave me victory over this, and not walk in shame and not be ashamed to stand in front of people and say, yeah, I used to sleep with men for money, which is why I can connect with prostitutes on the street. Or, you know, my dad was a drug addict, which is why I can connect with kids whose dad is out selling drugs, maybe to make a living for their family. My dad was in and out of jail, which is why I can connect with my kids who don't have parents, you know, all of these things. And so I do think that because of all of this, all these things that I went through, like God prepared me for this.
It's amazing. That's amazing. Like I'll keep saying it. I'm not afraid. I keep calling you my hero of the faith, and it's because I just learned so many things I didn't know about your past. Like, again, we've known each other, but I did not know the extent of it all. And now knowing that, what I've known of Colleen since I've known you is someone who is, I'm surely not always, but for the most part, full of joy, who is just positive and moving forward. And a lot of people get stuck. I mean, and it's fair to get stuck. That's a lot to go through. And all of our minds are built a little differently. Some people handle stuff different. But I would say if someone would have asked me if that's your past, I'd be like, they can't be. You know what I mean? Because you just you don't wear it on your face. And you don't wear it as a badge. Like the perfect word is victory. I really want to talk more, hear your take more. Like, I agree that the church in general, it's changing, but has had a very unhealthy view of counseling and any kind of psychological help. I mean, I grew up in the South. My dad, farmer and tough guy and truck driver, and he is 78 and just started seeing a psychiatrist. And I'm so proud of him. Yeah. It's such a crazy big step. How does the church get it right, or at least get closer to right? How do we take away that stigma? You know, that it's what it is for me. It's the Jesus can fix it. You don't need that. And yes, Jesus can fix anything, but sometimes that's how he fixes it. Like,
yeah, I think I've been very blessed with a pastor who believes in counseling, to the point that back in January, and I think I feel okay telling the story, I got my feelings hurt because I had asked for a meeting and it didn't happen. And so for me, that was very much like, oh, that person doesn't care about me. When in reality, I'm the kind of person that's like, oh, if you have time, I could really use a meeting. Not saying like, oh, I really need a meeting.
Yeah.
And so we finally had our meeting and we sat down and I just started talking. And at that point, I had been out of counseling for almost a year and wasn't having any counseling. And he looked at me and he was like, I really think sometimes you're stuck in your 5-year-old self of like still mourning and longing and hoping for parents who get it, for parents who are, and like, I really think you need counseling. Like, I really think you're not done. And so to be in a place where I have a pastor who believes in that, and even to the point of like, we're going to call someone today and you're going to start counseling next week. Yeah. But that doesn't happen in a lot of places because we do walk around with this attitude that Jesus can fix everything. But the reality is like, our counselors have been equipped to help us walk through this. Like, that's their calling and their gift.
Absolutely.
And like, I think we need to understand that.
I agree. And I feel I've mildly hot takes on different things. Like, I really feel like some things only exist because the church is failing. So like one of those is Bible college. Not a bad thing. It's a great thing. It's helpful. However, if the church was raising up the next generation of pastors and missionaries and teaching them all, then we wouldn't need it, right? Yeah. And I think counseling is maybe another one of those areas where, and it's not as simple as ordaining someone and slapping a sticker on something and saying, now they're a counselor and they know the Bible. No, like, these people are trained, true psychologists and like counselors. They have gone through rigorous training if they're good at it, if they're called to it, like you're saying. And I feel like the church should be doing that too. We should be sending our people to this training. We should be identifying the people in our congregation who are called to counsel, who are called to walk people through the really, really hard stuff. Yeah. For me, I think like, let's embrace it. And then maybe like, how crazy would it be if we could just raise some people up from out of the church to be those counselors, which I would love to see that.
Yeah.
I want to talk about GEM program. More specifically, I want you to talk about, I know what it is, but if pretend I have no idea. Yes. I want our people to understand as they're listening and watching what it is and how they could get involved, if they can get involved, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so when I moved into the neighborhood, I moved there with the intent to love the children of the neighborhood, have this kids program, and kind of just watch it flourish. At the time, we called it Kids Club. We met on Wednesday nights for like a Bible study kind of youth group thing. A few kids were coming, and that's what we were doing. They would come to my house, we would hang out, they'd have dinner, we'd play games, but there really wasn't anything beyond that. Because I think in my mind, it was like, no, I'm here to tell them about Jesus. That's what I'm here for. Well, fast forward to my first Christmas living in the neighborhood, I invited some teenage boys over to make Christmas cookies, and I just started to ask about their lives. Where do you want to go to college? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you dream about? And my heart literally broke into a million pieces that night as each one of them looked at me and said, we don't go to college. We don't graduate high school. We're lucky if we live that long. And if we do, we buy a house and sell drugs because that's what everyone does. And I was like, what in the world? I mean, I knew that, but to hear them say that out loud to me and say it with so much confidence that that's what they were born to do literally broke my heart. And so it was Christmas time and I couldn't really like go to my pastor and be like, it's Christmas time, but this is what we need. And so I waited. And after Christmas, we sat down and he asked me to make a list of like, what are your top, when you think about it, like, what are your top things? Well, education, mentoring, and the gospel. And so it was very easy to put GEM in a row and call it the GEM program. And so the gospel, the G stands for gospel, and we believe the gospel changes lives. E stands for education, and we believe that education provides opportunities. And M is for mentoring, and we believe that mentoring provides or puts dreams into motions. And so when you have all three of these things combined, you have a more productive child going out into the world. And so I wanted this to be not just a gospel-centered program, but that wasn't where it ended. Like, these kids needed to know, like, you can go to college, you can get a job, you can graduate high school, and we're going to help you make a plan to do that. And everybody's plan looks different. We have kids who traditional high school is not the way they're graduating. They're getting their GED. But guess what? You're still graduating high school. And then we pair all of our kids with a mentor, someone who's not a GEM volunteer, who is literally just their one person, their cheerleader, who will not just invest in that child, but eventually invest in that entire family. Like, who will invite them to your house, expose them to things outside of their neighborhood, come to GEM with them, take them to your churches, like, bring them to your dinner table to eat dinner with people who look different than them, bring them to places where people are going to ask why you're doing this. Like, why are you bringing this kid that looks different and acts different into this place? And so we have had 17 kids graduate high school since we started the GEM program, most of them African American boys, which the dropout rate in the city is over 40% for African American boys. We have 3 of them in college, most of them working jobs, 1 in the military. They're all doing, for the most part, productive things with their lives. We have a few who aren't, who are really struggling, but that doesn't mean we give up on them. That just means we continue to redirect them and pour into them in a different way. And so the GEM program, we officially meet on Wednesdays. The kids come, we break them into kindergarten through 5th, middle school, high school, basically groups, and then we teach them about Jesus. We love them. We spend time really figuring out how to make the gospel relatable to their lives, because there is no curriculum written about what happens in their lives. So we I don't want to say we make it up as we go along, but we really do spend a lot of time making what we're using relatable to them.
Absolutely. And I think it tailors right into what we were talking about with the counseling. Like, you're right. Like, I saw you kind of hesitated. I don't want to say it's just gospel, but no, that's part of the problem is the gospel is the most important thing, period. Mm-hmm. The news of Jesus. But people need those other things. Mm-hmm. Kids need to be educated. They need mentors. They need the cheerleader. That, like, one of the most hurtful things, I, as a touring musician, like, we'll go town to town and we'll minister to people, you know, and maybe people make a decision, draw closer to the Lord, whatever that is. And then I get in a bus and I drive away. So it's almost like, I call it like throwing like a holy hand grenade at them, and then like, good luck. Like, I hope this all pans out. Yeah. But this is next level. It's just like everything you do, it's ingrained in their lives. Like, you're right there day by day. And I think every youth group, like the traditional youth group, could really take a page out of that book. And I think maybe in the suburbs we don't do it if they have like a strong family background or whatever, but kids still want mentors. They want to talk to someone who's not dad. They want to know. I had people like that in my life. They want to know that there's people there in their corner. So I think it's a program that could really spread everywhere to different churches.
Let's be honest, kids are kids, whether they're white in the suburbs or black in an inner city neighborhood, and they all struggle with very similar issues. They just look a little differently how they're dealing with them.
Absolutely. Is there a way or a website, or is there any way people can give to the program, or that they can, how do they find that?
So they can give by going to captivatechurch.com, and then there's like a pull down give button. And then I have a GEM program little pull down tab. Okay. Or they can send a check, or they can reach out to me via social media, and they can come and hang out with us for a day. And really, I think you need to be there and see it. And the reality is, like, the people of your church and and the people who are going to be listening to this right away are probably people who are local. And so you can drive 20 minutes and see an entire different world.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's definitely worthwhile. And if you can't go give, like it's something it's just worth it. It absolutely is. It's an incredible program. I want to rewind back to, this is a very interesting part of your story to me. You are attempting to, or you're successfully, but one of your goals is to get prostitutes off the street. Can you just talk us through that? Give us you gave us the background, I understand, but like, how does that work? How does that function?
Yeah, so this is another one of those accidental ministries that started out of a relationship that I built. There was a girl, I would drive past her every day. I would see her on the street, and I knew what she was doing, and I felt some sort of like connection to her. And so I would begin to talk to her, and she would very, very bluntly say to me, "You're ruining my business. Get out, leave me alone, blah, 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 blah." And so I had to make a decision. Like, am I going to ruin a potential relationship with her by continuing to pursue her in this way? Or am I just going to like fall back and let God work it out? And so I decided to just acknowledge her when I saw her, but not push myself to her. And so it worked, because several months later, she stopped me and like we started talking. She wanted to buy ice from the corner store. So I gave her $1 and was like, "I'm going to trust you to bring me back the 50 cents, blah, blah, blah." And she said to me that day, she was like, "Remember when you told me you'd take me to lunch one day and we could talk? Is that still an option?" And so it was the most imperfect timing, because I was headed to a support meeting to get money to do ministry. And then I was like, no, this is actually perfect, because I can tell them I'm not coming because I'm doing ministry. And so I took her to lunch. We started talking, and she started to tell me like where she was from. And she's from Western Howard County, which is like one of the richest communities in the United States. And I was like, how in the world did this happen? And so she began to tell me her story of like, I lost a loved one. I was in college. The easy way to go was to do drugs. Like, I met these friends, these people, they poured into me, and like this friendship became, and she became addicted to drugs. And so her way of like dealing with that addiction was to sell her body. So I said to her, I'm like, well, do you want help? Are you ready to get help? Yeah, but my mom won't let me come home. Like, she knows that like this is a cycle, and I'm going to come home and then I'm going to come back and like blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, when you change your mind, call me. Here's my number. So she called me that night and was like, can you call my mom and ask if I can come home? And I was like, you want me to call your mom? And I did. And her mom was like, here's the deal. She always comes home, blah, blah, blah. I just don't know if I can do this. But if you really think she's ready for help. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to like
sign off on
vouch for this, but I'm going to do it. And so she went home that night, and we pulled up to her house, and I was just like, you gave up this to sleep in an abandoned house and get high and sell your body for drugs? But I understood. Like, I understood that. Mine wasn't a drug problem. Mine was like a need for like a daddy figure in my life.
Yeah.
And so I dropped her off. I began to build a relationship with her and her family. We started to look for help for her. She got herself clean. She was in rehab. She was home for maybe like a month. And then I really feel like she and I had some sort of like spiritual connection, because whenever she would come back to Baltimore, I would literally feel physically ill. That day I woke up and I felt horrible, and her mom called and she's like, well, she's gone. She was like, I told you this would happen. And I felt horrible. And I was just like, what do we do? Like, what do we do at this point? And so through her, I met these other girls. I also found out that there's this website that the men will pick them up, put them on this website, talk about what they do, how much they cost, are they clean, are they dirty, do they have a place to go? And so I began to like go onto this website, to the point where I had to tell my pastor when I moved in, if you see this on the log, this is what I'm doing. And I began to just pray for these girls, and God really touches my heart, and I just go and I find them, whether it's 3:00 in the morning or 3:00 in the afternoon. And I really begin to build a friendship with them of like, I'm not here to tell you that I'm from a church. I'm not here to tell you you're going to hell. I'm here to be your friend and walk through this with you. And they know that I'm a Christian. Like, they open this bag I give them, and the first thing they see is a pink Bible that's made just for them, like with hand lettering on the front, and like a card, and like a gospel bracelet, and like things that they're not using their money to buy. And then through that bag, I'm able to start to build a friendship with them, like meet with them, like, where do you want to go to detox? detox? Do you want to go to rehab? And so I've been doing this for 6 years. And to say that only 12 girls have come off the street sounds like, oh, only 12 girls. But that's a victory. That's 12
incredible.
girls that are like doing productive things with their life. And Amber, the first girl that I met, she actually died of a drug overdose a few years ago. And at that point, I had to take a break and be like, that's my girl. Like, she's the whole reason that I'm doing this. But I've held hands of girls that are dying over a drug overdose. I've called moms in the middle of the night to come and, like, if you don't come to the morgue and identify your daughter's body, like, she's going to become a Jane Doe and no one will know she existed. And so for me, this is like, I could be them. My circumstances were different, but like, I could be those girls.
Yeah. And that's what's incredible about that. There's a lot that's incredible about that. Like 12 girls, that's phenomenal. But not just ministry, any relational thing you do, it strains, it drains your energy, it pulls, and like, man, like, how do you deal with that? The tiredness, like, and I don't mean physical, you know what I'm saying? Like when you're investing in people that deep, when you're finding them in the morgue, like every one of those is like a hit on your personal energy,
Yeah, so 2 things. One is I've had to learn, especially in this summer, like, what does it look like for me to grieve when I'm helping other people grieve? And like, that's been very, very hard. And so I've had to really learn the value of self-care and saying, like, on this day is my Sabbath day. This day, I'm not going to do ministry. I'm not going to say I'm not going to answer your call, because typically I still answer the call to find out if it's an emergency.
Let me know what day it is. I won't call you on that day.
And unless it's like a dire emergency, like, I really do have to take time. And it's hard because I live there. And so my car's there and my front door is there. So if my car's home, I must be home. And that must mean you can come in and like hang out with me. But the reality is, like, sometimes I literally have to physically remove myself. I have been extremely blessed with, I raise my own support to do this. So I am a staff member at the church, but like, I raise my support and I have a group of people who are my supporters, not just financially, but like, hey, you need a break? Come to North Carolina for a weekend. Come to Texas and spend a week with us. So I have places where I can go and literally like remove myself. And I have to be very much on top of that, because there are times when I get so physically drained, and I'm an Enneagram 2. So I am always like, I just want to love, like, all the time. I don't want to stop. And so I have to realize that like self-love is a big thing too.
Absolutely. That's incredible. Where can people go to be part of that support? Where can they go to donate? Where can they go to pray for you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on social media. I post a lot of prayer requests and a lot of my stories about the kids and the girls that I'm working with and all that stuff, or to captivatechurch.com.
Okay, good.
In the pull down menu.
We'll super producer Steven, we'll give him some links and he can put some stuff up where you can jump down in the description. It's incredible. Like, you need the support, you need to be a part of it, but also like, you're getting something. If you just follow your story, like, it just challenges everything. When I'm doing ministry, I'm like, I have the easiest like job in the world, but it also lights a fire of like, what else should I be doing? What should I do differently? I'm interested to know if you, let's say 18-year-old, 17-year-old graduating high school wants to be a missionary. This is a brand new thing. What's the best advice you've got for them?
I think they need to throw themselves in, but I think they need to be very discerning in where they throw themselves in and who they connect with. I think that I don't know how to say this. It's very easy to look something up online and be like, oh, that looks cool. But are they really doing the work? And are they really biblically based? And are they really like living their life for Jesus? Or are they living their life for social media? Like, yeah. And to be aware of who you're learning from, but also not to be afraid. Because I think also when you're 17 or 18 years old, like it's, oh, you got to go to college, or, oh, my mom's not going to let me go live in the middle of Baltimore City. And there are fears, but at the same time, if you genuinely feel like God's called you there, he's going to protect you.
Yeah. And that's good. That's why it's very easy for me to say to listeners, viewers, like, support Colleen Smith. This is not a missionary who's living for social media. None of this is faked for the camera. Like, this is real life. There was a book. What was the book? Like, The Very Worst Missionary. I didn't read it, but it's interesting. Mm-hmm. It's that kind of situation where the author talks about, Yeah, I've seen excerpts, and it's basically like you'd be amazed how many people are just raising support to live in a different country.
Yeah.
Which is heartbreaking and sad. Well, that's awesome. What about just to you? Advice to young Colleen.
Man, I actually wrote myself an Instagram post a few months ago, and I said that I would have found my value much sooner in life and realized that like I am valuable and I am worthy, and I do have, even though my physical dad struggled with like loving me, I do have a daddy who loves me, and I do have like a family that God picked for me, like handpicked for me, that wasn't like the family I was born into, and to cherish that and to really chase after those dreams, because I think I in my mind was like, oh, I only want to be a sports writer. That's what I want to do. I'm not writing sports right now. I'm writing, but not sports. But it's that like really being open to like your calling and understanding your calling.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. How do you deal with, we've been going through a series here, and we've been going through a miracle series, and it led me to just down this rabbit hole, and it was about Jesus when he went home and he didn't do many miracles because they doubted him. The whole prophet is not without honor except in his home. How do you go home, and how do you deal with that? Like, how do people view you when you visit, or do you visit at all?
Oh, home to Kansas?
Yeah.
So I actually can count on one hand and two fingers how many times I've been home.
That's 7.
I've lived here for 20 years almost.
Gotcha.
And a lot of it just was like I was in a place of healing.
Yeah.
And I needed to heal. So even my mom passed away last year. My mom and I did not have a great relationship. It's a long rabbit hole story, but we just really did not have a good relationship. And so I really battled with, am I going to even go home for her funeral? And even being home then was hard, because now it's like she's not here. Like I can't fix it. So why am I here? And I think the hardest thing is my siblings. Like they just, when I first accepted Christ, like immediately, like I must have thought I was better than them. I'm a Bible thumper. I'm different. I'm this, I'm that. But really, I'm just me, normal. And my brother did come and visit and saw my life and was like, wow, I can't believe this is how you live, but I really love it. And so
that's amazing.
That was a very good thing for us.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. I can't believe it, but we're coming to a close. This has been unreal, and I could do this 17 more times, so I hope you'll come back.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Give us a favor. Give us a like, a comment, subscribe. Check out Colleen's social media. We're going to have links to everything where you can support Jim and you can support just her general mission work in East Baltimore. Appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you.